Well, BMI, or body mass index, has always been a part of an obesity diagnosis. But a team of health experts argue that measurement does not capture the whole story of a person's health. So that team is pushing new guidance for the medical community. A UC Anschutz doctor agrees with this move and is part of the Commission on Clinical Obesity. Dr. Robert Eckel is here with me now to expand on this. You and I have already been chatting. I'm fascinated. You said that over the last 30 years, there's been a lot going on, and there's continues to be a lot of new development. So let's start from the very beginning and discuss the problems with BMI. Why do you think that that is an isolated, it's a problem piece to diagnose obesity?
Well, body mass index is a ratio between your weight and your height squared. Nobody wants to calculate that, but there are all kind of apps where you can go to find out your BMI. The problem is, how do we define obesity? Do we define it by BMI? Not very accurately. If the BMI is very elevated, we don't have a problem there. But if the BMI is more in a gray zone, we really need to pause and think about how we define obesity. And that's what the Lancet Commission was all about. We were targeted and tasked to redefine obesity, and we have redefined it, Sam.
Wow, you've redefined it. That's a powerful statement. So what is the new guidance, and what kind of criteria needs to be used in a diagnosis today?
Well, the BMI is a starting place. But beyond that, we have ways of predicting who has too much body fat. That's how we should diagnose obesity, having too much body fat. So the waist circumference is a good place to start. Most doctors don't measure waist circumference. And by the way, this doesn't have to be done by a physician. It could be done by a medical assistant or a nurse or even a PharmD. We could have somebody in the clinic do the waist circumference. And so we now have criteria based on waist circumference that we can define obesity or too much body fat. And just a point in passing, when you put too much body fat around your belly, the risk for disease is much, much higher. So the waist circumference or the waist height ratio are two other ways to go about doing this. And if you want to be very sophisticated and spend a little money, a DEXA scan can determine body composition. In other words, how much fat is there and how much non-fat tissue is there in the body.
So you've talked about some of these guidelines. Will this guidance, everything that you just discussed, will all doctors be doing this, or will it just be suggested?
Well, we have 76 professional organizations around the world that have endorsed these new definitions, including the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, the Obesity Society, and 73 more organizations. The process we used to come up with the definition was a large agreement, if not unanimity, of 56 commissioners from around the world. So we're well-based scientifically. Yes, this should be applied. And I think one of the important things, Sam, that we're trying to get across is everyone with too much body fat doesn't have a disease.
Right.
We're defining this in two ways. Preclinical obesity, in other words, we've now found that someone has too much body fat, but they have no illnesses related to their excess body fat. And then we're defining clinical obesity, where excess body fat now has caused illness. And that illness demands attention. Whereas in the preclinical obesity, we're not encouraging people to gain more weight. Yes, we would like them to lose weight. But we have a degree of risk to becoming clinically obese that we would then target additional therapy. But keep in mind, the task for us was not to define treatment. It was to redefine body weight, excess, or obesity.
And you have redefined that. Just discussing with you right now. Fascinating stuff. Congratulations. You're a real pioneer.
Thank you,
Thank
Sam.
you, Dr. Eckel. Appreciate you.